other leaders in the world, and obviously the vice president is going, as you know.
He's got a busy day, obviously, with Ukraine, but has the president talked to any Supreme Court nominee? Have any interviews been scheduled? Will they
I'm
happen
going
in
to
person?
disappoint you here, Ed, and just convey that I think we're not going to give day-to-day updates from here moving forward about whether or not he's done interviews. What I can confirm for you is we're still on track to for the president to make a decision and make an announcement before the end of the month, which is in 2 weeks.
We file it under the guy.
He will do some interviews in the next 2 weeks. That's what I can confirm for you. Go ahead, Jackie.
Thanks, Jen. We've been told for a long time that some cyber attacks would likely precede an invasion. So if it turns out that Russia is behind what happened today, or is, I guess how I should phrase it is there work being done quickly to figure out if Russia is behind what happened today so that sanctions can be imposed before there is bloodshed? Or is the calculus still sort of centering on force on force or some passing over the
Sure. Well, we are constantly doing those assessments, and certainly as any cyber attack happens, that is certainly a process that happens behind the scenes and that our intelligence community and our national security community undertakes, as it would be in this case as well. I would note, though, as it relates to sanctions, one, there's a range of means that we could respond, both seen and unseen, so to a cyber attack or any other attack, and the president has the purview to do whatever he chooses in that regard. But our view remains that the crippling package of sanctions is an effective deterrent. So if you do that all in advance, what is to stop them from moving forward? Now, that may be a different of policy issue, different as of opinion, I should say, on policy issues with some in Congress, and that's okay, but that is our view from the administration.
And then this may or may not be related at all, but is there any information on what caused the power outage on the North Lawn? I mean, every TV network lost power at the same time during
It was a very
President's remarks.
inconvenient time, I will just note for all of you and for us. I don't have any assessment of that, no, or yes.
And
Go
then
ahead.
does the White House view Ukraine giving up on NATO aspirations as a possible off-ramp? Understand that the president has said, the administration has said over and over that NATO members would not encourage or would not give up that ability for someone else to join. But they do have a long way to go. And now that there's all of this concern that if there was a member, if they did become members, it could potentially trigger Article 5. Is there any discussion among NATO allies about how significant it would be if Zelensky were to make that offer himself?
Well, we have not raised that from the United States. And again, I would reiterate what I said a little bit earlier, which is that our position is that we are not going to pressure Ukraine or any country to join or not join an alliance, that it is nations have the right to sovereignty and territorial integrity, and that's a choice for them to make.
Why is the administration encouraging Americans who are or fleeing through Poland to bring proof of COVID-19 vaccination? As I understand it, Poland does not require that. So is there going to be a shift in messaging for Americans who are trying to get out through Poland?
I would check with the State Department on that. I'm happy to follow up for you on your behalf as well. Go ahead, Kristen.
Thank you so much, Jen. I want to circle back to the idea of what de-escalation would look like and how the administration would trust that it were actually real. Do you have a sense of how many troops you would need to actually see with your own eyes through satellite images or otherwise would need to withdraw in order for this administration to feel as though Putin were in fact de-escalating?
Well, I think, Kristen, that is a decision that we would make in partnership with our NATO allies, right, and European countries. And you look at everything from satellite imagery, something that many of you have access to validation and verification of what they're saying they would do. So I'm not going to be in a position, nor would I expect the Defense Department would be, to give you a troop number. But I think it would be very clear if that were a step they were taking.
And I think there have been a lot of mixed messages publicly coming out today. Among them, the NATO Secretary General said that there is cause for cautious optimism when it comes to some of these talks that are happening behind the scenes. Does the administration, does the president share that cautious optimism? Because we heard from the president very firm language.
Well, the president also conveyed it would be positive if it was verified that they pull back their troops. And certainly the openness to diplomacy is something that everybody should support, and I think our NATO allies would support as well. At the same time, we've seen this playbook before, and especially given the history of President Putin and the Russians, their history of false flag operations, of misinformation, we need to verify.
So, and I guess that's my question. Does the administration share the NATO Secretary General's cautious optimism?
I don't think we need to put in more words than what the president just conveyed in a speech to the country.
GOP senators have unveiled a sanctions bill. Have you assessed whether or not this is something the administration wants to see some movement on? Is this something that you would potentially support, given that the bipartisan talks stalled?
Not yet, because it just came out. But again, our view remains that a bipartisan effort would be the best effort moving forward. And as I conveyed to Jackie a few minutes ago, our view continues to be that the crippling sanctions package we've designed is meant to be a deterrent. Go ahead, Ken.
Jen, the Senate's working on this stopgap funding bill. The deadline is Friday. What's the level of confidence that the president will be able to sign that extension by Friday? And separately, has the administration been talking to the two Republican senators who raised concerns, Senator Lee and Blackburn?
We are engaged with a range of Democrats and Republicans, and certainly we are hopeful that we will be able to sign this. I would note, though, that I believe, and correct me if I'm wrong here, that one of Senator Blackburn's primary concerns is about a relation to the funding of crack pipes. Is this correct? Which is not an issue. So this is an issue that what is happening here is that's potential to hold up funding the government and important programs around an issue that is not an issue, because we've been very clear that we are not providing funding for crack pipes.
And then the Senate Banking Committee had planned to vote on your Fed nominees today.
Yeah.
There was a holdup there. Republicans have objected to Sarah Bloom Raskin's nomination. What does the administration think of this delay? And is the administration going to provide any additional details to Senator Toomey, some of the issues that he's raised?
Well, let me first say that this is in a very extreme step that's totally irresponsible in our view. It's never been more important to have confirmed leadership at the Fed to help continue our recovery and fight inflation. And obviously they have a unique role to play, an important, a vital role to play as it relates to inflation. And I think Democrats and Republicans have agreed on that for decades. So Republicans are out there saying inflation's a problem, it's a huge issue, we agree. And then they're not even bothering to show up to even vote against these nominees to the Federal Reserve. What message is that sending to the American public? So and I would note just on Sarah Bloom Raskin, since you asked me about her as well, she's one of the most qualified individuals to ever be nominated to the Federal Reserve. She's made the strongest ethics commitments in the history of the Fed, even as she's made extensive disclosures to the Banking Committee as a natural part of the process. Senator Toomey has continued to promote false allegations that have already been shot down by ethics experts, the Kansas City Fed, the founder of the Reserve Trust, and Sarah Bloom Raskin herself. So we're going to continue to work with Chairman Brown on a path forward and look forward to the Banking Committee eventually holding a vote to commit these to confirm these 5 nominees. Go ahead.
Is there any entertaining of other options if it stalls in committee? There appears to be some question about whether the Senate as a whole can advance these nominations. Is that something you're exploring, or is that something that you don't think you have the power to do?
You mean in terms of different legislative processes or different?
There's some speculation that the full Senate could sort of skip the committee vote if it stalls out and bring them forward.
Sure. I don't.
Do you believe that the Senate has that power, or does it have to go through committee?
Our focus right now is on working with Chairman Brown on moving these nominees through the committee.
Can I ask also on COVID funding? HHS briefed Congress this week requesting about $30 billion in funding. Can you give us a sense of, A, can you confirm that? B, what in particular do you need this funding for, and has the existing funding been allocated?
Sure. So HHS's briefing today or this afternoon was a part of our regular conversations with Congress about various resource needs, including what is needed for COVID response. This is important because while we continue to have sufficient funds to respond to the current Omicron surge in the coming weeks, our goal has always been to ensure that we are well prepared to stay ahead of the virus. So we've been in these ongoing conversations about what those needs might look like, and this was a part of that effort. In terms of funds that have been allocated or spent, more than 90%, so available rescue plan funds, which is where the funding has come from to date, have been obligated or allocated. 90% of that has been for purchases of vaccines and therapeutics, vaccine distribution efforts that have gotten shots and arms testing, including for schools and at other high-need locations. Resources from the rescue plan and prior COVID response bills have enabled us to respond forcefully to the Delta and Omicron surges. And what we're trying to do now is stay ahead and stay in contact with Congress about what those needs might look like.
Secretary Blinken said yesterday that the U.S. is not on pace right now to meet the president's goal, the WHO goal, of vaccinating 70% of the world by later this year. Is any of this funding aimed at jumpstarting global vaccination efforts? And can you talk a little bit about why you're not on pace? Is it, for instance, a supply problem, or is it a problem with what Secretary Blinken called last mile type stuff, getting shots in arms, to borrow the language of the college?
That is an undervalued part of it, I should say. So I thank you for raising that part of it. So right now we've shipped over around 440 million doses and are continuing to aggressively share around 10 million doses a week to the world, free of charge. We're the first country to buy doses for the sole purpose of sharing them with the world. We also bought, as you know, 1 billion doses. And Secretary Blinken, I think, made those comments in part because he wants to rally the world to do more. But a big part of our effort right now, and where we have seen challenge, is turning vaccines into vaccination, which means working closely with our partners on the ground and dealing with hyper-local issues countries may be facing to increase vaccination. And this is a big part of the focus of Ambassador Power and USAID's Global Vaccination Initiative. But part of it is that shots in arms component.
Have we started deferring their U.S. donations because the capacity is the problem more than the supply?
There have been moments, yes, where countries are not able to receive the doses that we're able to provide. Go ahead.
Thank you. Creating a gas tax holiday takes legislation.
Yeah.
And I'm wondering, what are other things that the president can do on his own to mitigate a gas price hike because of Ukrainian conflict? What else can he do by himself? And in terms of releasing oil from the SPR, have you made a determination of how much cost rise that would offset? In other words, what good does it do? Yeah.
Sure, that's a good question, and those are assessments that our economic team's constantly, of course, making. We did see even the anticipation of the release back in December helped lower the price by about 10 cents, but those assessments are constantly being made. In terms of without a decision being made, which I know you're not asking, but just to be clear, there are steps the president has taken in the past, obviously tapping the Strategic Petroleum Reserve. He has also we have engaged with oil-producing countries around the world. That's something we will continue to do because clearly we need to ensure that the supply out in the global market is meeting the demand. And obviously,
Encouraging other countries to produce more.
correct. Yes, and that's been a part of our effort, even as we anticipate what impact there could be from an invasion. So, as you know, there's obviously a difference between natural gas shortages and the impact on home heating, which is largely a regional issue. But we have been still in Europe, but we've been still working with partners on that as well, but also on the supply of gas out in the market. Oil, I should say, for gas. So go ahead.
The president said that an invasion remains distinctly possible.
Yeah.
Some senior administration officials said a couple days ago that as soon as this week. Is that still the timeline, or has anything shifted based on the kind of mixed messages of the last couple days?
We don't have a new assessment. As I think you heard the president say, there's a distinct possibility, but we don't have a new assessment of a decision being made either.
And then I know there have been internal discussions about giving a speech like the one the president gave
Yeah.
today for some time. Why today? And then the intent behind it. Obviously, it seemed to be looking to hit on multiple audiences to deliver specific messages to them. So why today, and why that range of messages?
You know, Phil, I mean, you all have been covering this very closely, the potential of an invasion, our diplomatic engagements, and there's no question the American people have been consuming what you have been reporting. But I think we felt, and the president felt, it was important to be very clear and direct with the American people about what the impact could be on them, what the consequences would be, what our values are, and why it is important to stand by not just the territorial integrity and sovereignty of a country, but also stand among our allies and partners around the world. So it was very